The British drove on the left side of the road because of knights? Apparently, they needed to quickly draw their sword when crossing paths with an enemy. From kissing under mistletoe being a curse, to Hawaiian shirts creating casual Fridays, I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 captivating facts and origins. A limousine pulls up, and wealthy celebrities emerge to thousands of white flashes. And what do they step onto? A red carpet, of course. And in doing so, they are sharing in a practice that stretches back to ancient Greece. This is where the red carpet was first used, in a play named Agamemnon, dating back to 458 BCE, where, quote, crimson broderies spread for the king's path. Leonardo DiCaprio isn't quite a king, but, well, I guess he's close enough in the modern world. If you're trying to put on a southern accent, well, the first thing out of your mouth might be, howdy. And while it's all over the south of the states now, it was born in a different south. The south of England. It's a shortened version of how do ye, and people being lazy, this was squished together over time. When English settlers planted roots in the US, the saying took hold. And with the popular Western films, howdy partner was spread to the world. Did you run that marathon, learn that new sport, or save more money? New Year's is the time to make wildly unrealistic promises that you inevitably break. But don't feel too bad. The ancient Babylonians were doing the same 6,000 years ago. They also celebrated for 11 days after the spring equinox, their version of the new year. So it's understandable they wanted to make some promises to their gods, probably to relieve an unimaginable 11-day hangover. 2,000 years ago, the Romans used engagement rings as a sign that the woman belonged to the man, as in, was owned by him. Fast forward to the 15th century and onwards, these rings weren't so much a symbol of ownership, but rather purity. They were a kind of virginity insurance, assuring the groom that the woman hadn't slept with anyone else yet. Maybe unsurprisingly, there wasn't an equivalent ring for a man. Then, businessmen came in. A South African diamond company kicked off a massive marketing campaign, convincing everyone that a proposal didn't mean anything unless it came with a ring. And a genius if it wasn't so evil. Blessing someone after they sneeze goes back thousands of years. We still don't know exactly when the phrase originated, but it's probably some kind of superstition. People once thought that the violent nature of a sneeze was so powerful that it pushed the soul out of the body for a moment, or it got rid of evil spirits. Historians aren't entirely clear. The point is, sneezing was some kind of religious experience, so enjoy it. Dainty sneezes are adorable, especially when they have a huge buildup. Sorry. This is the threat parents use to discourage misbehaving children. But was any kid actually unlucky enough to find a lump of coal in their stocking? Santa Claus comes from the Greek bishop Saint Nicholas, who gave out presents. And in some parts of Europe, the punishment for misbehaving would be things like rocks or ashes. Throughout the 19th century, these rocks were replaced by what was being mined out of the ground, coal. And while kids might not know exactly what it's used for, well, it's quite obviously not a present. Riding a horse is hard enough as it is, but there is a rule generally followed by horse riders all over the world. You mount it from the left. Why? Traditionally, soldiers would carry their weapons on their left side, and they need to be ready to engage at a moment's notice, pulling out with their dominant right hand. Now, you can see the problem that might arise if they were to mount a horse from the right side. The sword could be squished, and either the rider or the horse would be the one taking a battle wound. The custom stayed, and now, most horses have gotten used to someone jumping on their back from the left. So, don't horse around. At any important military celebration, you'll find soldiers shooting their guns up in the air. Pfft, never mind where those bullets land. Where did the practice come from? Surprisingly, it's the opposite of war. This kind of ritual firing into the air was actually a way to signal to others that they didn't want to go to war. Imagine you're sitting at a dock and spot a fleet of ships floating in. You don't recognize them. And suddenly their guns start firing. 600 years ago, this would actually have been a sign that they were getting rid of their ammunition and looking for peace. Over time, firing shots came to represent other kinds of honor, like the death of a captain. And superstitious as they were, most often these were in odd numbers. By the 19th century, American ships were being ordered to give a 21-gun salute when the president visited. Which came first, the bunny or the egg? Bunnies, also known as hares, were considered so special in ancient Europe that there's evidence of them being buried with the same rituals as humans. The Romans also banned eating hares during any religious period. But bunnies don't actually lay eggs, so where does that link come from? Even before Christianity, eggs were a sacred symbol representing life and birth. So with the rise of Easter, it was natural to use the egg to symbolize Jesus' rebirth. These two images, the bunny and the egg, became intertwined, and by the 17th century, the tradition of the Easter bunny hiding eggs was popping up in Germany and England. Digging a little deeper into the egg origins takes us 5,000 years into the past. These weren't your regular plain white eggs. Sumerians were decorating them with intricate designs back then. And further back, around 60,000 years ago, eggs were being engraved in Africa. What's this fascination with eggs that we have? Fast forward to when Jesus Christ started to be worshipped, and eggs took on a new meaning. The hard outer shell was thought to symbolize the tomb he was sealed inside, which would break with his resurrection. And eggs were even painted with red dye to reflect his blood. That is somehow a lot darker than the chocolate eggs we have today. Always keep a reserve bowl of candy on Halloween, lest you want to be the target of a trick. The Celts called it Samhain, which itself goes back thousands of years and celebrates the spirit world of the dead. That's why fancy masks were worn and bright fires lit up to scare off the evil spirits. So that trick-or-treat stuff? That came from groups knocking on doors offering prayers for the price of a soul cake, a round, sweet baked piece of shortbread. After Halloween traveled with Irish immigrants to the US in the 19th century, it quickly became a staple of American culture. Any excuse for sweets. Although the Welsh National Anthem was composed in the 1850s, it didn't gain much popularity until the early 1900s, and it has the New Zealand rugby team to thank for that. In 1905, they were facing down the All Blacks, the most feared team in all of rugby. Their haka, a traditional war dance, was enough to intimidate any opponent. The Welsh had a perfect response. They sang their anthem, Hen Wlad Funadai, which translates to Land of My Fathers. And to this day, it remains one of the favorites to hear before a rugby contest, with some saying it makes, quote, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Valentine's Day is the one day of the year a boyfriend cannot afford to forget, but it wasn't always like this. The name comes from Saint Valentine, a bishop from the 3rd century. Saint Valentine's Day was started a few hundred years later, but it wasn't until the 14th century, when a poet named Geoffrey Chaucer came along, that Valentine's Day became a romantic day. In one of Chaucer's poems, he described it as a day when every bird cometh there to choose his mate. From then on, Valentine's Day was sealed, and so was the pressure of the 14th of February. For the pranksters out there, thankfully there's an entire day dedicated to pranking where you can't be held accountable. April Fool's Day probably comes from France, when the country decided to throw out the Julian calendar and move to the Gregorian one. That meant that what was the new year then became April 1st, and the people who were slow to catch on were called April Fools. However, this account is disputed with different theories. Oh my god, is the date itself a practical joke? And you know what? To be fair, can you imagine how strange it would feel if the entire calendar suddenly shifted overnight? Toy Story, Batman, and American Psycho. What do all these have in common? Well, they all feature a mistletoe kissing scene. For some reason, this is a Christmas tradition. If you look up to see mistletoe, sorry, but you gotta kiss who's ever beside you. Those are the rules. This custom most likely comes from Norse mythology, specifically the son of Odin. Not Thor, a different son named Balder. Balder is a bit of a mommy's boy. His mother goes to great lengths to protect him, casting a spell to stop any plant on Earth from being used to harm him. Oh, what a good mother. However, for some reason, mistletoe isn't affected, and tragically, he's killed by a mistletoe arrow somehow. Not really sure what that would look like, but anyway, this meant that mistletoe became a symbol of love. And by the 18th century, kissing beneath the mistletoe was a thing. Remember that evil guy in Titanic, Cal Hockley, who sneaks his way onto a boat by pretending to be with a child? Well, the women and children protocol is real. And it goes back to the 19th century when a British ship, the HMS Birkenhead, was sinking near South Africa. There were over 600 passengers, and while most were soldiers, around 50 were women and children. After the ship hit the rocks near a place appropriately named Danger Point, one of the officers on board made a bold call. For the first time in recorded history, he ordered that women and children take the lifeboats first, meaning hundreds of soldiers went down with the ship. This was probably because most of the women and children were the families of the crew, making it a little easier, but it was still a tremendous sacrifice that is recognized today. What's the first word out of your mouth after picking up the phone? Actually, for Gen Z, most communication is done through texting on social media apps, but once upon a time, when the telephone was a brand new invention, people were actually arguing over what would be the most fitting way to greet someone through the strange new metallic device. The telephone's inventor, Alexander Graham Bell, by the way, great name for a phone creator, argued that it should be ahoy. It was an old nautical term. And the reason it sounds old-fashioned is that, well, he lost the argument. The winner was Thomas Edison, who proposed hello. You know what? I actually kind of prefer ahoy. I kind of feel like a sea captain. Ahoy! Let's bring that back. Hashtag bring back ahoy. Most of the world drives on the right-hand side of the road. But if you've ever been on vacation in the UK, you'll know they drive on the left. How come? It has to do with swords, just like how you mount a horse. Back in the 1700s, long before guns, anyone looking to defend themselves carried a sword, and most of them carried that sword in their right hand, which meant the best place to ride your horse was on the left-hand side of the road, ready for a fight. Now, we might not use swords anymore, but it might be handy for making some road rage gestures. Hang around the cities of Bolivia, and you're bound to see some style. The buildings, the people, and the clothing. But the most stylish part is probably the bowler hat. The cholitas, who are the older ladies of Bolivia, are most often seen wearing them. Bowler hats are most often associated with London in old movies like Mary Poppins, plus they're even worn by British police officers to this day. So how on earth did they end up becoming a staple of Bolivian fashion? Well, in the 19th century, there were Englishmen working there building a train system. The story goes that once a load of hats arrived, they ended up being too small for the workers' heads. What do? They convinced Bolivian women that these were in vogue in London, and they've been a hit ever since. I prefer the flat cap. I don't know where mine is right now. Where the hell's my flat cap? I don't think I'd look good in a bowler hat. Let me know, do you think I'd look good in a bowler hat? Where the hell's my flat cap? Somewhere. I use it for Dark Roast Detectives. Check out that channel if you haven't. Aside from, the person you're marrying, the best man is the most important wedding choice a groom has to make. We've all seen the movies. Pick the wrong guy, and you could end up in Vegas missing that special day. But historically, the reason for a best man isn't just a nasty hangover. The tradition first appears with the Germanic Goths of the 16th century, and the best man would be the one helping a groom kidnap the bride. That's also why they stand close by during the ceremony, to make sure she doesn't run away. Oh, how romantic. Thankfully, weddings are consensual now, and the best man's job is to throw a great party. And of course, make an embarrassing speech. Mine wasn't embarrassing. I was the best man at Robin's wedding. Robin, if you're watching, let me know, was mine embarrassing? No, I had a great speech. Is there any aircraft more iconic than an Apache helicopter? How about the AH-6 Littlebird, the V-22 Osprey, the H-13 Sioux, or the H-47 Chinook? You may have noticed all these helicopters have interesting names. It's because they're named after Native American tribes. Why? It started in the 40s and was made official 20 years later, with the names being selected by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The idea is to instill the same amount of honor, bravery, and strength that Native American tribes are known for. There's also a history of Native Americans helping the American military, like in both World Wars. That naming convention spread to other military things, like the Tomahawk cruise missile, which is probably the coolest name of all. Would you name your kid Tomahawk cruise missile? Don't answer that. If you've worked in an office before, you'll know that managers like to mix things up every now and again. One of the most common traditions in the business world is Casual Friday, a day to rock up in slightly more comfortable attire rather than a suit and tie. You might feel a little ridiculous showing up in a Hawaiian shirt, but you'd actually be paying respect to where the tradition comes from. It all came about in the 60s when colorful shirts, tie-dye, and long hair were all the rage. And an association called the Hawaiian Fashion Guild knew it was the perfect moment to capitalize. It took this moment to start advertising the Hawaiian shirt, a short-sleeved shirt with colorful patterns. And what better way to market than with a gimmick? They would call it Aloha Friday, a chance to wear a Hawaiian shirt to work once a week. Hawaii approved of the practice, and it slowly made its way to mainland America, where workers were keen to jump on any excuse to get out of their suits. In the work-from-home world, though, do we really need a Casual Friday anymore? Or is every day casual? Oh, thank God for the handshake. In almost any situation, it offers a way to introduce yourself respectfully all over the world. The Assyrian king Shalmaneser is shown shaking hands over 11,000 years ago. There are surviving stoneworks with Greek shaking hands, and the gesture even appears in the iconic stories The Odyssey and the Iliad. So, was it the same meaning back then? Basically, yes. It was a show of trust. It proved that you didn't have a weapon in your hand, and that might have been the reason the handshake later evolved to shake up and down, to drop out any weapons that were hidden. And in a way, Today, that pretense of trust is still there. Even world leaders who hate each other will share a handshake. Sometimes the most expensive part of a wedding has nothing to do with the food, location, or guests. It's the wedding dress. And when you look at the massive price tag, well, you can thank Queen Victoria. Oh, she and I share a birthday. She started the trend in 1840. This was when she married Prince Albert, who, by the way, was her first cousin, something apparently completely normal for the royals, but it was what she was wearing that really made waves. Queen Victoria made the bold choice of wearing white. Back then, white was extremely expensive and hard to come by. Just like Britney Spears started the trend of crop tops, young women wanted to follow Queen Victoria's lead and dress in white for their weddings too. There's a moment in every man's life when you have to learn to tie a tie. It's never straightforward, and you can put yourself into knots trying to get it right. So, who's to blame? Well, it turns out, the Croatians. Let me explain. When the French King Louis XIII needed troops during the enormous 30 Years' War, the Croatian mercenaries were happy to lend a hand. When they arrived, one thing struck King Louis more than anything. Instead of scarves, which were popular at the time, these Croats had a different material around their necks. This is what King Louis named a cravat, which in French means Croat. This was the jumping off point for other styles, like the ascot tie and the bolo tie, slowly becoming longer and made of different materials. You know that saying where you give a false alarm too many times, so much that no one believes you anymore? When does the phrase crying wolf date back to? A. The 14th century, B. The 17th century, C. 600 BCE, or D. The 2nd century? Let me know your answers in the comments below. Not ready to stop the facts flowing? Pfft, no problem, I got you covered. How about the fact that chickens can live a year and a half without a head? Or that plants actually have their own version of the internet? Click here for 25 facts you'll be talking about all day. Once again, thank you guys so much. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. Really helps the channel. And I'll catch you guys next time. I'm gonna go wear a bolo tie.